A lot of you have seen me all week wearing this flower in my hair. Some of you have smiled. Some of you have looked at me kind of to the side like, I don't know about that. Some of you have been kind enough to not say what you were thinking. And some of you have actually commented. And do you know God used that? God used your words. Because the story is that when we were in one of our first ministries in Mexico, we were taught that anything that drew attention to ourselves took away from the message we were given. No fingernail polish, no loud colors, skirts to the floor, nothing that draws attention to yourself. And so the fun part of Katie got stuffed way down into those long skirts, and I complied. Because who am I to take away from the gospel? But years later, in a different ministry, in a different situation, I was supposed to be teaching a class in like 2 minutes. Hot, humid, I was running after the kids, trying to get the background looking decent. You know how it is, right? Hadn't given a thought to my hair. Grabbed my daughter's flower headband and stuck it in my hair and went to class. I went, oh, Katie, I love your headband. That looks so awesome. Well, thank you. I didn't think anything of it. Next class, where's your headband? How come you don't wear that more often? That was really cute. And so I did. I put it on again the next day. And when I did that, the Lord spoke to me. And he said, you know how you feel when you wear that flower in your hair? That's how I want you to feel all the time. I made you to love color. I made you to be someone who could shine my light just the way you are. There is no shame in being who God made you to be. There is no shame in being who God made you to be. There is no shame in sharing the story that God has divinely appointed for you to take to the world when you share it for his glory. And as God gives me opportunity, this flower in my hair has allowed me to talk to witch doctors and millionaires and beggars on the street about Jesus. He can use your story. And every time someone comments on how beautiful or fun that flower is, God reminds me that he delights in how he made me. Brian mentioned our flamingos. This is another part of my story. A couple years ago, we took our kids on a trip up the river in Mexico. Got to go see flamingos in the wild. I'd never seen them in the wild. And I don't know what I was expecting. I'd only ever been close enough to the pink plastic yard ones, But we came around the corner in that river, and there was pink everywhere. Green on both sides of the river, the blue sky above, and pink fluffy clouds. I mean, it just looked like somebody's cotton candy machine had exploded all over the place. And it made such an impression on me. And as our little tin can motorboat got closer, our guide lifted the motor up out of the water so that it wouldn't drag and get bent up, because there's crocodiles in this river too, right? Really shallow water, crocodiles there, the flamingos, and I'm thinking they're going to fly away. They're going to be scared. I better get some pictures while I can. Do you know what they did? They were not scared of me, and they were not scared of the boat, and they were not scared of the crocodiles in the river. Those flamingos stood there and did exactly what God had created them to do in spite of the danger. They didn't care how odd they looked in that environment. They kept doing what they were created to do. They didn't care what we were saying about them. They kept doing what God had created them to do. And do you know that a flamingo gets his color from what he eats? I use these metaphors now in my business all the time. It's actually become our brand name, the Flamingo Advantage, because you get to do you in business. Flamingo is colored by what he eats. The brightest of the flamingo has found the best food, and he is the leader of all the other flamingos because he knows where to get the best nutrients. Translate that into your story. Who's looking to you to find what they need to be getting nutrition from? Spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially, in their faith, in their relationships. Who's looking to you to be the pinkest flamingo you can be? And are you giving them that? Are you getting your story to them? Do they see it? Can they digest it? Can they follow you? And if not, why not? The God who sees all, knows all, and is not surprised chose you. He chose you. He put this story into your hands to share for his glory. We don't have to be ashamed to be who God made us and to share the story that he has ordained in our lives. But there's one more stuck place before we end today. And that stuck place is self-doubt. Can I really do this? This is the final slide if you want to take a picture of all 5. Can I really do this? And my answer is, nope, you can't. You absolutely cannot do this on your own. I don't care how many affirmations you say. I don't care if you say it louder and prouder. I'm enough, I'm enough, I'm enough. That is a lie. We are not enough. We are not anything apart from the power of Jesus Christ. I can't do this on my own. I can't share my story. I couldn't even breathe this morning if it were not for an almighty God who said, I want you to be there and share your message today. I can't do it on my own. But you know what? There's hope. Because Philippians 4:19 says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You say, oh, that's the verse everybody uses, Katie. Yes, and you know why we use it? Because it's true. I can do all things, say it. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That is the truth I live by. If God says do it, you can do it. I could be here for hours telling you all of the I can't stories in my life. But God said you can. And God makes it happen. Galatians 2:20 says, I have been crucified with Christ, but I don't live. It's Christ who lives in me. Do you know how freeing that is? It's not that I can't do this. It's that I don't even have to. God does it through me. This is my favorite verse of all time. Faithful is he that calls you, who also will do it. Faithful is he who calls you, who also will do it. I just have to be willing to be called and let him do it. Be willing to be the channel of the message. Be willing to be the one who gives the story. It's not about me. I'm a dead man. I died. Christ lives through me. This is about what he wants to do for those people through my story, through what he's done in my life. That poem that I read you at the beginning came from my book called In Spite of Myself, How Intentional Praise Can Transform Your Heart and Home. And this is a book that I took to a conference like this, and I paid the money to talk to the traditional publishing agent, and she read it, and she looked at me straight in the face, and she said, Katie, it's a good story, but nobody's going to buy it. And I went home crushed. And I cried a little. And God said, publish it anyway. And that book gathered a launch team of over 200 people, hit Amazon bestseller the first day it was out, and this was back in 2016 when it was a whole lot harder to do. And that book has had an impact for years. Hundreds and hundreds of people messaging us. Thank you for sharing your story. But what I didn't know at the time was that my grandpa, the same one who had said, Katie, God is not surprised. God is not surprised. He was inspired by me writing that book. And he wrote his first book at the age of 84. Yeah. Just like Larry. And in that book was a story that my grandpa had never told before. You see, after my third child was born, I had postpartum depression. I had days when I had thoughts of hurting myself and my kids. I was home alone 12 hours a day with 3 little ones, and nobody knew I was going through this. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I didn't know how to get help. But when my grandpa wrote that book, he shared how God had rescued him from depression. And it became what helped me overcome and helped me heal. And so my obedience to publish that book anyway set in motion a course of events that God used to come back and rescue me. And I didn't even know it. Not to mention the hundreds of people, the grandchildren, the 60-some great-grandchildren that are being impacted by that story today as well. Because God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And when you get into alignment with your assignment, he can use your story for his glory. But you have to take action. It's up to you. Brian said today is the day to decide. We've made an invitation for some of you here, and some of you will become Hope authors. I hope all of you do. But whatever you do, do not leave here without having made a decision to take the next right step, like Keith was saying, with your message. You have a message someone needs. You may need a message that is inspired by your own message someday. You need to take an action. Everything we have done here this weekend to serve our hearts out will be in vain if you go home and do nothing with what you've taken away. Don't let that happen. Take action with the story you've been given.